Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. After 3 games finished, I have still almost a perfect situation for me in the standings. I have managed to win all of my games so far, while my opponents have divided their points almost as equally as possible. So really quite a nice start for me. Nonetheless, 17 points likely won't be enough to secure me and myself the first spot. And with that, I still need to score some points, and the opportunity to do so I have now in the two-player game that we are taking a look at today against amaj. So now without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing in the first position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. And in a two-player game, of course, especially, it's interesting to take a look at what culture leaders in the game. We have Anthony Gaudi, Bach, and Shakespeare. We have the Hollywood, we have the internet. We have Fleming, but no Marlene and Chaplin. So there is certainly the potential for this game to be quite the culture fest. Certainly lots of ways to generate a lot of culture. Could be a game where the Hollywood is very much contested. Apart from that, we have some lab leaders with Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Einstein, Marie Curie. We have the Red Cross, which is always interesting to note. We have the Suez Canal, James Cook, so setting up for a colonization game can work as well. The railroad is there, the Harvard College, so there are some interesting wonders. No ocean liner service though, but Maria Theresa. In H1 we have St. Peter's Basilica to help with the happy faces, Great Wall to help with the strength, we have the Machu Picchu, we have both the military action leaders, Joan of Arc and Shishka. In H2 we have no military action leader, and there's Columbus and Isabella who can maybe work nicely in a colonization game, Nostradamus to help with the strength, and Gutenberg for some synergy with lab and printing presses. There's no Acropolis in the game, but some other strong HA wonders. I'm in the first position, and I think for me it's best here to pick the Engineering Genius. I think especially in a two-player game, the Engineering Genius gets a bit more valuable because you not only have to consider how strong the card is for yourself, but you also need to consider that you of course take it away from your opponent. I don't want to commit to a Joker here. I could take, of course, the Roman roads, but then I would just leave the opportunity for amaj to maybe just take the Engineering Genius, maybe plus Ashoka, maybe just plus either Urban Growth or Frugality, get the Pyramids together with it, and I think that would just be a bit too strong. And I think now when I take the Engineering Genius, things are just working out quite well for me. For example, amaj could of course now take the library away, but it's not a problem at all for me. Then I just go for Aristotle in my next turn, and for Pyramids in 2 turns I have a very strong combination, Aristotle plus Pyramids together with the Engineering Genius, so that would be quite nice. If amaj just commits to the Roman roads, then I can take either library or Pyramids and again get Aristotle. And what could maybe be the most annoying for myself is if amaj would take Aristotle, because then at my next turn I don't have a leader that I can take. There's a chance that Hammurabi could fall down to the 2 civil action area, which would fix this issue, and there's also a bit of a problem for amaj in this line, because if he just takes Aristotle at his turn, then at my turn I can maybe just take the Pyramids for 2, build a mine and increase my population, library will be discarded, and then amaj would be sitting there without any HA wonder, which also maybe wouldn't be that ideal. So I felt like there are, all the outcomes that I could think of were quite fine for me. Amaj decides to go for the library, maybe values that a bit more highly in a 2-player game than the Roman roads, because he could have of course also just taken the Roman roads, but like this he denies the library from me, which is not really that impactful because I can get the Pyramids, but he of course also makes sure to get the wonder himself. Now it's my turn. I for a tiny moment thought about if maybe it could be worthwhile to take Hammurabi for 3, elect him, build a mine, so that I take him away from amaj, but it would just be very expensive, and I think Aristotle plus Pyramids is a strong combination, and amaj at least still has to take Hammurabi for 2 actions, so I think that would be an overreaction here, and I think I should just go for my very clear plan of going for Aristotle, building a mine, increasing my population, and then being able to take the Pyramids at the next turn. I draw the developed territory, which could be nice for Columbus and maybe the Suez Canal and the cultural influence. Amaj this turn, I think maybe goes for a bit of a suboptimal line, increases his population, builds a 3rd mine, and is actually not going for Hammurabi this turn, and instead takes those 2 HA cards. And of course he can get Hammurabi for civil action cheaper at the next turn, but if he would have gone for Hammurabi this turn, he also would have gotten already a civil action out of Hammurabi, of course at the cost of a draw, but the problem is that spending 2 actions in those HA cards is really not an efficient way of using the actions. I think it would have been better to go for Hammurabi this turn, and then actually have more actions available at the following turns, because those actions weren't spent on those not really efficient cards. Maybe, of course, Amai is also looking at Alex, maybe plus Joan of Arc and some completely different lines, but I think Hammurabi might have been the best option here. Now it's my turn. I still expected that I might go for Hammurabi, and with that I thought maybe it's nice to push the deck a bit forward, maybe put Hammurabi in a bit of an awkward situation, potentially with the military, so I seeded the cultural influence into the deck. The development of civil life is revealed. Now I had to make a bit of a choice, which will also have quite an impact on in which direction I will go in this game, because with the development of civil life, I could have potentially built my second lab at a 1 resource discount. That could have been quite strong, because and then I would have had 4 resources at the next turn. Together with the engineering genius, I could have finished the pyramids, and I could have just made sure to get my economy going quite quickly, having the second lab, at the next turn already finishing the pyramids. And yeah, so with that I felt like that certainly could be quite interesting. But then again, we are in a game that could become quite culture heavy. There's Shakespeare and Antony Gaudi, in such a 2-player game, I think it is also just extremely strong to go into printing press setup and maybe be able to go for some pairs with Shakespeare. I think it's very important to not only be prepared for Bach, so that if your opponent takes Bach, you can respond with one of the other culture leaders. And with that, I actually at the end decided to not go for the second lab, and maybe go for a slightly suboptimal line in an economical sense, but in order to have a better setup for my H2 game plan. And with that I used the development of civil life to increase my population. I take the pyramids, I take the printing press. I could potentially develop the printing press already. I do think that could be a reasonable choice. At the end, however, I build a step of the pyramids, making it that I can finish it a bit more quickly, which maybe could also allow me to potentially grab a wonder at the next turn, and also it leaves the door open to maybe getting into iron at the next turn in case Amai doesn't deny it, so I stay a bit more flexible with still leaving my science saved up. But it could also be an idea to just develop the printing press, and then I maybe can start building those to get my science production going as quickly as possible, now that I have delayed the second lab and will do a bit of an investment into the printing press. I will draw 2 cards, the Crusades and the Knowledge of the Ancients. Amai seeds, so the event deck is moving forward, the development of science is revealed. He will this turn go for Hammurabi, and yeah, I think he probably should have gone already into Hammurabi the turn before, but he will still be able to go for Iron, Engine of Arc this turn, which I think makes sense. Just securing that early copy of Iron, Engine of Arc also maybe makes him a bit safer, so that if I should maybe try to go for a bit of military setup, maybe with me having taken printing press, that's not that likely, but then he can respond, or of course he might even be able to go for a bit of an aggressive line himself, with me maybe going for those printing presses. At least with taking those 2 cards, the irrigation will drop down to 1 civil action, so that's a card that I maybe can pick up very nicely. Now it's my turn, and I again decided to move the event deck forward and push the Knowledge of the Ancients into the deck. The development of planning is revealed. One of the options is the development of religion, and I decided to take that over some potential resources that I could have gained, because the culture that you score over the course of the game in a 2-player game is just somewhat relevant, and I think it's just the best option to take here. And this turn I get somewhat rewarded for building the step of the pyramids at the turn before, because I decided to go for a somewhat interesting line. It wasn't obvious for me at first, but when I thought about it, I felt like that could really put myself into quite a strong position. I take the irrigation. I use the opportunity to take that card for 1 civil action with Aristotle, so I think that's just a strong thing to do. And I could just either finish the pyramids and do some stuff, or I could maybe go for a printing press or something. But I thought about how do I really invest the last actions then, and at the end I actually finished the pyramids and took the Machu Picchu here, which maybe at the first look looks a little bit questionable. Machu Picchu, a very expensive project, I don't even have the iron yet, I might only be able to build that relatively late, and I also delay the printing press even more, delaying my science income even more. And That is of course true, but again, here I was maybe willing to do some, for the short term, economical sacrifices in order to improve my setup for later in the game. Because when I go for those printing presses, when maybe my aim is to go into Shakespeare or potentially one of those other culture leaders, then I think having a lot of population is extremely valuable. And so I felt like if I have Machu Picchu plus irrigation, I should really be able to get a lot of population out. I should have enough population to go for some pairs, while not neglecting maybe the military too much. And so I felt like on the long term that potential with the Machu Picchu, especially in a game where there's no ocean liner service in the game, um, basically the food income was the more relevant factor here to go for me to go for the Machu Picchu than the food than the resource income. Nonetheless, of course, I would still like to get into iron together with the Machu Picchu at some point, but I was mainly thinking about this irrigation. And so I was happy that I built a step on the pyramids the turn before, allowing myself the turn. Another reason why I was willing to do this is that Gutenberg is coming down the road. I have now delayed the printing press for a little bit, and of course if I go for Gutenberg I again won't build those printing presses too quickly, but I have now another project to invest into, the Machu Picchu, something that I can set up over the next few turns, and then just I can use Gutenberg to go for those printing presses with a discount, save some science and resources, and also score a bit of culture, which is not completely irrelevant in a two-player game. And I do think Gutenberg has quite some nice potential. So with Gutenberg coming down the row, and with me looking at H2 leaders like Shakespeare, that I maybe want to be set up nicely for, I felt like this Machu Picchu can be quite strong here. I draw some cards, the Good Harvest and the Blunder. Good Harvest, of course, has the potential to be quite an interesting card for me, with me having likely a lot of food production at some point. Amai Seeds, so the event deck has moved quite quickly so far. The development of Settlement is revealed. He will take the Free Religion as well, which is of course quite nice for his Shin of Arc. He goes for an upgrade to the mines, builds the second lab with the Urban Growth, takes the rich land and builds the Step of the Library. Now it's my turn, with Amai not putting any effort into getting stronger. He could have just elected Shin of Arc. I think it's likely that he hasn't pushed any strength events. Nonetheless, I thought I just want to move the deck forward, as I don't really have anything to fear for me. So I just seeded a Good Harvest, which hopefully at the point when it will be revealed will be a nice event for me. The Scientific Breakthrough is revealed. Now I get a bit punished for having delayed my printing press. I only gained 1 science out of that event, but no, it's not the end of the world. Then I this turn will go for Gutenberg. There's of course Jan Žižka, but I don't have any tactic to work with right now, and so Gutenberg just felt like the better leader here. Amaya, during his turn, nicely made sure to let the Code of Law stay in 3 civil actions for me. It didn't take any cards from the row, and now it is quite difficult for me to take that card, and I do think that is quite an important card in a 2-player game, as there are not that many ways to get additional actions. And because of that card being so important, I thought about to just take the Code of Laws here, develop it, then go for Gutenberg, develop the printing press, and then I can increase my population to get out of corruption. I thought about that line, denying the Code of Laws from Amai, who soon will maybe have some additional science production from the library. But then again, at the end I felt it's just a bit expensive. I already have the additional action from the pyramids. I don't need a Code of Laws that much. It maybe makes it more difficult for me to get into a government form, and the government form will at some point be important so that I can build more urban buildings. That is a relevant factor, and if I struggle with going into one later on, that could be problematic. But also one of the main reasons why I decided against going for the Code of Laws here is that I then don't have the action to implement this urban growth into my turn. And this urban growth and the ability to build a printing press potentially for cheap with Gutenberg at the next turn could be quite strong, as we will maybe also see at the end of my turn. So at the end I was willing to give Amai the Code of Laws, but I will let it stay on 2 civil actions, and at the moment Amai also doesn't have enough science to go for into it immediately, so I think it's still a strong card for him, but I don't think a denial would be worth it here. Instead, I take the Knights with Aristotle, scoring 1 last science with him. He scored me 3 science at the end, not the most, but somewhat decent. I then go for Gutenberg, use this action to develop the printing press, take this urban growth, increase my population, and build a step of the Machu Picchu. And as you can see, I'm missing 1 resource to finish the Machu Picchu at the next turn, but there is the knowledge of the ancients that I've seeded in the deck, and if that should be revealed before my turn, then I at the next turn could already finish the Machu Picchu, get an additional food and resource production, and thanks to this urban growth, and that's the reason why I especially found it very important to take that here, then I could finish the Machu Picchu to get a production while still building the second printing press for free with Gutenberg, and so I really wanted to have that urban growth in this situation. I keep my events in hand, draw another territory as well as the heavy cavalry tactic. With me having a lot of population, maybe I can make it work to get into heavy cavalry, even though it will be a bit of a struggle. Amai this turn goes for 2 iron upgrades, takes the swordsman and the code of laws. The next turn can then maybe go for the library. I this turn seed the developed territory. I was willing to seed here. The developed territory is not ideal for me to seed, because at the moment I'm not nicely prepared to win it, and there's a Suez Canal, so I could get punished for just putting a colony in, but I just wanted to give myself the chance to see the knowledge of the ancients revealed, to maybe finish the Machu Picchu already, which I think would improve my turn. But the knowledge of the ancients isn't revealed. I see the developed territory over the wealthy territory, which I'm not sure if it is correct, because I could certainly use some additional science, of course also some additional resource, but he has already good resource production and not the most population, at least for now, while I, with the irrigation in Machu Picchu, will have a lot of population, and maybe the additional resource from the wealthy territory could actually be very useful for me, as I'm not sure if I did the right call here with putting the developed territory into the deck. I will use Gutenberg to build a printing press for free with the urban growth. Then I take the breakthrough. I think that's just an extremely strong card to get for 1 civil action. To get out of corruption, I will go for 1 upgrade to irrigation and build 1 more step of the Machu Picchu, so that I can hopefully finish the Machu Picchu at the next turn. And with my last action, I then took a copy of reserves, because that allows me to, at the next turn, finish the Machu Picchu, play the reserves for resources, and again use Gutenberg to build another printing press for free to just get my science production started quite nicely. And then I also have already my irrigation set up, so at the end that turn looked just quite decent. I could maybe consider taking the theocracy here. I have the pyramids, and the additional happy face as well as the benefits that I get for the military can be quite useful. I do think the theocracy has the potential to be quite strong in a 2-player game. And if I would maybe be able to finish the Machu Picchu and build a printing press without those reserves, I would have maybe gone for it, but like this I rather left myself open for the Monarchy. And I wanted to have those reserves. I took the left copy of the reserves, so that just for the small chance that Amai doesn't take this breakthrough, I maybe have another shot at getting it for 1 civil action at my next turn, where if I take this copy, the breakthrough will be discarded, and I don't think it's bad in any way to leave Amai the option of going for those reserves, as it's not the most efficient card. I keep my tactic and the territory. Maybe I could even go into cartography potentially. I draw the migration in the inhabited territory, so even another colony. My seeds, the knowledge of the ancients is revealed now. I gain more out of it, and I was also happy to see that it's revealed before Amai has finished his wonder, because I do think he maybe would have needed the additional science a bit more than the additional resources. So I was overall happy about this, how this event has worked out for me. Amai this turn will go for Joan of Arc, gets a bit stronger. Interestingly builds a warrior, so doesn't really need that, but could be a sign that maybe in the next event deck maybe there's some strength events coming, or that he maybe also just wants to use military actions before entering age 2, of course. Interestingly, he also didn't develop the code of laws here. Could have spent 6 science. Maybe he wants to be able to develop it with the breakthrough at the next turn, so that he can go for both code of laws and swordsman. So maybe he indeed has some potentially more aggressive plans and doesn't want to be stuck on 3 science. At my turn, I don't see it. I build another printing press with Gutenberg, so he is giving me some nice actions, and also culture. I have a bit of a culture lead for now. And then I first of all take the iron, of course. There is also the option of just going for 1 iron upgrade, but that only gives me +1 resource, while finishing the Machu Picchu gives me +1 resource and +2 food, so I think that's just a lot better. So I play the reserves, finish the Machu Picchu, and then I have 2 actions left, and I will use those to first of all increase my population, and then take the patriotism. I'm not totally sure if it is correct. Maybe I could have taken cartography, but I felt like that is a bit of a distraction here. Of course, I've already seeded 1 colony, I have some more colonies in hand, but now investing science into it, and then later on actions to rebuild, and I only have 2 military actions for now, no defense cards, so the cartography even doesn't guarantee me if I win those colonies. I thought about it, especially with the Suez Canal being in the game, but I felt like I shouldn't distract myself. I have a clear game plan. I want to get in into one of those culture leaders and just set up a nice economy. So I at the end let the cartography stay on the row. And then I of course could have taken the swordsman, but the thing is, the one tactic that I have and that I have knowledge about is the heavy cavalry tactic. With the amount of population that I'm having, I felt like I have a chance to maybe make that tactic work, and then I felt the patriotism is just more useful for me to have than the swordsman. I keep the tactic and the wealthy territory. At the Dark Ages, I draw the Dark Ages in a colonization card. Age 2 starts. Amai this turn will now develop the Code of Laws, place the reserves for food, increases his population, builds the warrior, so doesn't go for the swordsman. With that, maybe he could have developed the Code of Laws already the turn before, but now he also has generally more signs saved up, so maybe if he's from now on is just waiting for a government form, that could also be beneficial, that he waited until he could develop it with the breakthrough. And then he also takes the masonry, which can be a strong technology in 2-player games, or generally, I also came to appreciate it more in 3- and 4-player games. Amai with going for that Legion is now a little bit threatening with being at 6 strength. And at my turn, I first of all see the Dark Ages, which seems a bit weird with how my turn is looking right now and the amount of science that I've saved up. But I will spend a lot of that science. I will go into Monarchy and then either Knights or Iron. And Amai is still waiting for an H2 government form then. And I felt like the Dark Ages have the potential to maybe do quite some damage to him. So I was willing to push those into the deck. The new deposits are revealed, giving Amai a bit more resources, but I think it's still a somewhat fine event for me, because Amai is maybe somewhat struggling to spend those resources efficiently. And yeah, this turn I think I maybe played a little bit too greedily. And often it's good to play it greedily in a 2-player game, but here maybe I played a bit too greedily. First of all, I decided to get into the Monarchy, and I think that's a good decision, because Amai is putting a bit of military pressure on me, and I do think getting additional military actions makes my life just a lot easier. And also I just have my government form together with the pyramids. That will be a fine solution, maybe even until the end of the game. And I can just build as many urban buildings as I would like. Then with having seeded the Dark Ages, I want to go for another technology. And of course it's very tempting to get into Iron here. With the Machu Picchu I will get a big boost. And maybe I should also play it greedily. It's always hard to tell in 2-player games, but the thing is, I am at the moment can't defend against an aggression. Amai has only drawn one H2 card, but that could potentially be already an H2 aggression. He might potentially try it. And yeah, I generally was happy about my position. I have the printing press set up, plus the Machu Picchu. I felt like that is a good, a good ground, or a good base that I can work with, that I can maybe put me into nice positions later on. And yeah, maybe with that I shouldn't play too greedily here. However, what I decided to do, instead of maybe developing the knights and building a knight, making sure that I'm not in danger of an aggression, slowly making my transition into the heavy cavalry tactic, I decided to go into the Iron, go for an upgrade, go for another upgrade, and use Gutenberg to build another printing press, meaning that now with the amount of happy faces that I'm having and the amount of workers that I'm lying around, it will be a bit challenging to go for 3 knights. Now, of course, that gives me quite a bit of economical value, and if Amai only goes for an H1 aggression, I do think that is maybe still the correct choice, even though it is a bit of a commitment, of course, to build that 3rd printing press, but it also gives me some nice benefits. And I at least draw 3 cards, so there's a chance that I just draw a defense card, there's a chance that Amai isn't even trying an aggression, so I think maybe it is also correct to just play it like that, but it's also a bit greedy, certainly. And so, yeah, maybe now it will be a bit challenging for me to get into the heavy cavalry tactic. I was hoping that maybe the good harvest would be revealed soon, and then with that I have still a lot of population and can then maybe start going into the heavy cavalry. Maybe I can even disband either mine or lab, or of course the warrior, to make sure to get that heavy cavalry tactic going at some point. I think here it's also important to let Harvard College stay on the 2 civil action spot for Amai, because otherwise he could just take it, develop the masonry and finish it. He can do the same now with the St. Peter's Basilica, and together with Joan of Arc, that is of course also not bad, but I think the Harvard College might first of all be even stronger for him, and second of all also potentially quite strong for me, because I also have quite a good amount of resources now. And at least when Amai now takes Harvard College out of this spot, I can maybe still go for the St. Peter's Basilica, which would also be quite nice for me to have enough happy faces if I go for just a bunch of culture buildings. So yeah, I played a bit greedily, at least going for those mines. Also decided I can use some actions already if I just build a knight. I mean, I could maybe increase my population, but I might end up taking some yellow cards, which I think maybe is not the most efficient thing to do here. So maybe it is still fine. Maybe you could just hold off on Gutenberg to have more free populations for the military in case they are needed, because now I can't really get a population out unless the Good Harvest is revealed that I can put into the military. So yeah, maybe just a bit too greedily. But maybe it's also worthwhile. And I do also get somewhat rewarded, because the last card that I draw here is the Mobile Artillery, and if I would have spent one military action to build a knight, I wouldn't have drawn it. Now, of course, it's the question if Amai goes for an aggression. Has he maybe even drawn an H2 aggression? That could really backfire now, of course, for me. And he doesn't have an aggression, or he doesn't want to try one, which I was relieved to see. He goes for the St. Peter's Basilica, which allows him to spend a lot of his resources. He will then get out of corruption by building another warrior, and also get stronger, of course, with Joan of Arc. Doubling this happy face gives an additional strength, this warrior gives an additional strength, so Amai is even more threatening. Nonetheless, I was happy to see that the Harvard College wasn't taken. I think it might have been the correct decision for Amai here to go for the St. Peter's Basilica, just because he can finish it. But the additional science from the Harvard College, I think, could have been also extremely helpful for him. Now it's my turn. I think I see it, mainly with the hope of pushing the Dark Ages out of the deck. And there are no Dark Ages revealed. Instead, I get punished for being in low strength. And I actually lose a population, which is a bit annoying, because that could really make it more difficult for me to get enough workers to build up some more military. I will this turn first of all increase my population, otherwise I would have had an uprising issue. There are some interesting cards in the row. There's Bach together with the Opera, there's the Republic, Amai still needs the government form, there's the selective breeding, Amai missed out on the irrigation and didn't take it. So there's the potential for me to just take Bach for 3, take selective breeding for 3. But I don't think it's the correct thing to do here. I have the luxury that I don't need Bach, because I am also prepared for Shakespeare. Of course, maybe I want to take Bach away, but the thing is here, there are more interesting things for him on the row than he can really take. He might want to have the Republic, he might want to have Bach, he might want to have selective breeding, so he can't get any of those cards anyway, so I do think a denial is not doing that much, because whatever I deny, he then just takes the other cards, and he might have not been able to take all of the cards that he wants here anyway. So I just felt like I will not take those cards. I will let the selective breeding stay on 3 in the Opera and 2, though I do think that's maybe important to achieve in this turn. And then after increasing my population, I will go for another food upgrade. With the Good Harvest coming, I think that's, and also with just having lost a population, it's more important than upgrading my resource production. I will then take the Harvard College, and I will already develop the Knights, because there could be the Dark Ages coming. And of course, Amai with Joan of Arc sadly sees it on top. That's so you can maybe play around it if he sees it, but maybe if he doesn't see it and seeds and then gets surprised by it, there's maybe a chance that he could lose a bunch of science. Of course, again, I'm vulnerable to an aggression, and Amai has now drawn some more H2 cards, so I was a bit afraid, but I do think here it's now the correct choice. I do think it would be too costly to really make completely sure that I can defend, because in order to achieve that I would need to build 2 knights, meaning I would need to destroy 2 things, and that I think would maybe be would hurt even more than a lot of aggressions would do damage to me. And again, I draw 3 cards, and with having that 1 H1 defense card, if I draw 1 H2 defense card, I actually can defend against an aggression, so I was now willing to risk it. But if I wouldn't have built a printing press the turn before with Gutenberg, maybe I could have built a knight now, but then again, it still wouldn't have made me safe from an aggression, so maybe it's also just the best to maximize my draws here and maximize the odds of me getting a defense card. I don't get a defense card here, which made me worry, of course, a little bit. Let's see if Amai has something to punish me. And yes, this time he is able to punish me. He plays the Blunder and takes 5 resources away from me, which is quite annoying. Interestingly, he doesn't take any food. Maybe taking 3 food could have been interesting, but he makes sure to take the selective breeding, so me letting stated on 3 has maybe made it that it's now quite expensive for him to take it. And then he maybe gets some food production now going anyway, and him taking that many resources from me is also a bit annoying. I still have that Harvard College lying around, which will cost a bunch of resources. I might still need to build a bit of military, so losing 5 resources to Amai is certainly a setback here, and I was a bit worried and hoping that I soon will be able to stabilize with my military. Amai goes for the swordsman and the alchemy. Kinda looks like that he maybe saw Dark Ages on top, I felt. Because otherwise developing the alchemy here may be a bit questionable, especially with also delaying the selective breeding. On the other hand, maybe there weren't also the most interesting cards available to take. With going for 2 upgrades here, Amai is also even more threatening, but he also doesn't draw any cards. And it looked like those first 3 cards maybe weren't any aggression, so I was hoping that maybe Amai doesn't have anything to punish me, but I was felt a bit vulnerable here at the moment. I could have seeded to maybe push the Dark Ages out, but I've thought about my turn, and losing the 1 science actually removes an option from me, and that is to go for Opera with Bach. Which of course you could argue is quite a bit greedy to do anyway, but I felt like I can also play a turn where at the end maybe don't lose any science to Dark Ages, and at the end I felt like it could maybe be fine to go for that Bach line here, so I will go for Bach. Gutenberg isn't doing anything, so while I could wait for Shakespeare, I think now that Bach is available for 1, I can just take him away from Amai. Amai isn't nicely prepared for Shakespeare, he can maybe make Antony Gaudí work, and then I can take him together with the opera, and I will even go for the opera and upgrade an HA lab, which costs me of course a bit of science, but I will get some science production back at some point, hopefully with finishing the Harvard College. I'm missing now again 1 resource to finish the Harvard College, but I will also spend some more resources this turn because I will play the Patriotism and build a knight. I won't build any more military. Again, it would have been very costly to make sure that I can defend. Instead, I again wanted to maximize my draws. Now that I'm at 3 strength with the 1 H1 defense card plus 1 H2 defense card plus any card, I could again defend, so I will again get 3 cards, and if Amai tries an aggression, there's at least a chance that I will draw a defense card. But now there could be some really painful aggressions. For example, an infiltrate could be extremely painful. Maybe Bach could be removed from me. Not sure if I maybe drew 1 copy of infiltrate at least. I think. No, I'm not sure. Maybe if you go back in the video, you can check. I think maybe I drew 1 copy of infiltrate, but I'm not certain. But there is a second copy, and also some other aggressions like a raid or something could be quite painful here. But again, Amai hasn't drawn that many cards, and it would just be very costly, so I felt like that's the better chance. I get now a lot of culture reduction with Bach. I can use my action somewhat efficiently, and yeah, so that's that. On the other hand, I am now maybe especially vulnerable to a potential war, because I at the moment don't have enough science to go into cannons, but with the Dark Ages likely being on top, at least when we saw how Amai played his last turn, I think I kind of need to spend some science, and at least I have enough science to go into cannons in 2 turns. But then if I get hit by a spy, again things could get a bit dangerous. Maybe I could have implemented a revolutionary idea into the turn with the last civil action. I will now increase my population. So maybe I could have played it differently, but I will use my actions efficiently, get a lot of culture production with Bach, and I'm nicely prepared for the Dark Ages, and Amai has not drawn that many cards so far. I was really hoping for a defense card. I would feel a lot safer if I would have one, and I sadly don't draw one. So now, yes, I have now already drawn 9 H2 cards, I think. So it's a tiny bit unfortunate to not have any, but at least I have this tactic to work with. And let's see if Amai has another aggression to punish me. He doesn't. He seeds. Dark Ages is indeed on top, but he could argue that now I didn't really do any damage to Amai. He just saw it with Children of Arc, could play around it. I do think playing around it still was somewhat painful, because I think for Amai potentially could have been strong to just fix his food income now as quickly as possible. Maybe fixing the science income is of course quite strong as well, but I think playing around it was maybe a bit awkward for me as well, but I felt like the technologies that I developed were more useful and had more immediate impact than the ones from Amai, so overall I was still happy on how that event performed for me. Amai follows up with his bit of a military push that he is doing at the moment, which could of course also be the right way to play against Bach here. He just goes for the railroad, goes up to 15 strength, increases his resource production, gets out of corruption, uses the masonry nicely, gets 3 draws, and with those 3 draws, of course, now it gets more likely again that he has either an aggression or a war in hand, which I was worried about. I think I pushed the National Bright into the deck, hoping for the Good Harvest. However, the Good Harvest is not revealed. Instead, the Developed Territory, which I can't really bid that much on, I at least make it that Amai has to pay a little bit more maybe, and he has to send a colonization card away, which maybe later on will actually get relevant, as we will see. And now it's my turn. I think with my science situation, I think a breakthrough for civil action is just something that I have to take. There are no cannons revealed yet, but there are still 2 copies. It's likely that one of those copies is revealed before my next turn, and I think this turn I can't really do anything about being able to defend against an aggression, so I at least wanted to be able to be hopefully be able to defend against a war in case the cannons are revealed before my next turn. I go for 1 more iron upgrade, just doing that while I can, increase my population, and then I just take a bunch of cards. The reserves could give me valuable resources. The architecture, together with the breakthrough, maybe I still have enough science for it. I could use it in the Harvard College and still save some resources when I go for more operas at some point. It's just potentially a very strong technology in 2-player games. So I take all of those cards for 1 civil action, which I was somewhat happy about, that this is possible. And yeah, but I'm quite behind in strength. I would need to draw 3 H2 defense cards in order to be able to defend against an aggression. However, if Amai goes for a war against me, then I am in a position to go for a mobile artillery tactic, maybe even an additional cannon potentially, depending on where the cannons land on the row. And then I could maybe even potentially win a surprise war or something. I could even think about revealing the mobile artillery tactic to maybe make it that Amai isn't willing to go for war here. But maybe I could also surprise him with a big strength increase and then maybe even make it that he goes for an unsuccessful war. But mostly I just wanted to again maximize my draw so that I maybe draw a defense card which isn't useful for me now, but maybe could still be in the future if I maybe increase my strength by at least a little bit. So I draw 3 cards, still no defense card. And Amai is actually going for war. There's no copy of cannons revealed yet, and I was worried, because if none of the 2 copies is revealed before my turn, it gets really annoying for me to defend this war, and I can't really do anything about this then. So I was now really worried, and I could get punished quite heavily if the cannons are not revealed before my turn. Amai isn't increasing his strength a lot. I mean, he has also only 1 military action. Instead, he's just focusing on his economy. I think a good choice by him. Just goes for a lot of upgrades and takes a Happy Face solution in hand. Remains on 14 strength for now. Maybe also value use the 1 draw more highly here than the 1 additional strength that he could have had for the war, which also could be very reasonable. And also, sadly, he makes sure that very few cards are revealed. Maybe knowing that cannons could potentially be quite helpful for me. He lets me have the Rifleman. Dying, that would have been quite costly for him, probably too costly to do it, and it wouldn't really do anything because I don't have a tactic for them, so you see here that it's definitely the right choice not to deny them or something, and it's a lot more impactful that he makes sure that only few cards are revealed, and we will see that sadly there's no copy of cannon revealed, so that is now quite a bit dangerous. I push an event, to be honest. I forgot now what event that was exactly, to be honest. Maybe the immigration, but I'm not certain. I don't think I would have seeded immigration when I have this war ongoing. Maybe we can quickly check that. So, because that could be some important knowledge, and I forgot that at the moment. So let's quickly go through those turns again. I draw. Let's quickly take a look at what I've drawn. I push the arms industry, yes. I was hoping that at some point I go into cannons, and then the arms industry could be a beneficial event for me. And a good harvest also. It's nice to see that now. Sadly, it was revealed that late that Amai also gains 6 additional food now, which I think is quite helpful for him. And yeah, no cannons in a row, meaning that I sadly will at least lose 2 yellow tokens to this war, which is not great. So again, I this turn just... Yeah, I can't really build a lot of military. I can building as many knights as possible or something, or going into Rifleman would just really undermine my ability of fixing my strength later on, because it makes it more difficult for me to go into this tactic. So what I did at the end is to finish the Harvard College, build 1 knight, that makes sure that I at least don't lose 3 yellow tokens, and then I just take the efficient upgrade, the wave, journalisms to deny some peaceful options from Amai. He now can't really go for Shakespeare. Gaudi gets quite a bit worse. The opera stays on 2. Taking Gaudi and the opera costs him 3 actions, so I really make it difficult for him to go for any peaceful plan. And while, of course, for now the military plan is working quite nicely, I was hoping that as soon as I get the cannons, I maybe can stabilize, and then Amai could be a bit stuck and doesn't have a good way to respond to my now startingly big culture lead. So I take the journalism, and then I will increase my population to get out of corruption. But I was a bit worried because I already don't have the most happy face. I will now lose 2 yellow tokens. I'm again not able to defend against an aggression. Amai could still have something like infiltrate. He could have something like spy, which would make it that I can't go into cannons at the next turn. So I was quite a bit worried again and was really hoping that Amai doesn't have one of those aggressions that does some really big damage to me. I took the efficient upgrade, which I was mostly planning on upgrading a printing press to opera, because that could maybe help me a little bit with my unhappy face issues. I draw some cards. I draw a copy of Infiltrate. Maybe that was the one copy that I remembered in my head, that I had it in hand at some point. So at least one of those copies, or maybe even 2 when I drew one earlier as well, is now out. And Amai steals 2 yellow tokens from me. And he actually goes for a second war over territory. However, this time it's almost guaranteed that I will get a copy of cannons. He could of course take those for 3, which would be expensive, and then there's a chance that the second one wouldn't be available, but it would be unlikely and also quite unlucky. And here I could maybe surprise Amai with this tactic, and it was already a bit dangerous in the war before, but he made sure that not many cards were revealed, so I think that's fine. But now I think this war, I mean, Amai maybe has to play towards his outs. Maybe if I don't have a tactic, I just get a lot of damage done to me here. But me not taking the Rifleman maybe could have already been a sign for Amai that I maybe have a tactic with cannons in hand. And so with that, it's a bit dangerous to go for this war, but also could of course have a big reward for Amai if I don't have any tactic to work with, and I then could get into a very vulnerable position. Amai goes for another swordsman, goes for the conman, which has enough science to develop at the next turn. He then goes for Antoni Gaudi, it costs him 2 strength, but the age would end before his next turn very likely anyway. Now it's my turn, and I actually decide to see the Independence Declaration. For now I haven't won any colonies. I was actually hoping that I might be able to win one, because what I will open here is the wealthy territory that I've ceded earlier on. And Amai, if he bids for it and he loses some strength for the war, that's fine. But there's a chance that maybe he isn't willing to bid for that, but then I can maybe send Winded Colony potentially for just a warrior. And that helps me with my happy faces and also helps me to more easily get into that Marvel artillery. So I felt like it's now a really good time to open that colony, and with that was willing to push. And indeed, I Winded Colony for just a warrior, so that's quite strong. And now I can go for cannons. The second copy wouldn't have appeared in the row, so maybe Amai could have denied the cannons, but of course he doesn't have knowledge what tactic I'm having. I go for the cannons. I upgrade a printing press to opera, which frees up 1 worker at least, and then I can increase my population 2 more times. I don't have to disband anything thanks to winning the territory, otherwise I would have had to destroy something. But without playing any yellow cards and without disbanding anything, I will now be able to go for 2 cannons. And I can reveal the tactic, and I will actually steal the 2 yellow tokens back that I got stolen from me. So that's kind of funny, something that I didn't have happen too often in my games. 2 Volvo territories, and then the tokens are just stolen back into the different direction. And so that it's at the end basically the same as it was before. And generally I was extremely relieved, because the turns before I was very nervous. There could have been ways how I could have gotten some severe damage with an infiltrate, with a spy, maybe if the cannon still wouldn't have been revealed and I got hit by another war. And I was maybe a bit unfortunate to not draw any H2 defense card. I was maybe fortunate to have this tactic, even though it took me a while until I could use it, but having the opportunity to use it now is of course quite nice. And now I have stabilized my strength. I will actually gain 2 yellow tokens back, which is also extremely useful for me. And now I felt really good about this game because I have the strong economy and I have Bach and I'm at the moment running away with the culture and now I have stabilized the military. So I was extremely relieved after this turn. Now h3 starts. I will lose 2 yellow tokens to me, still has quite a bit more yellow tokens than I have. He goes for the Conmon now, builds the 3rd lab to gain more science, builds the warrior, takes the cavalryman, increases his population, builds the religion. With the St. Peter's Basilica, that is quite a help for the happy faces. Now that we are at the beginning of h3, we can maybe take a look at the overview. We can see that I have quite a bit of a culture lead, and yeah, I think from now on I just need to make sure that I am safe from the military, and then with the amount of culture reduction that I'm having, I should have good chances to win this game. If Amai maybe manages to build up some very big military, or maybe if he's managing to do some other great stuff, maybe he just manages to go into multimedia movies, finds Fleming, finds Hollywood. Something like that, of course, can also always be a possibility to make a comeback, big Hollywood or something. But overall, I think now things are looking good for me that I finally was able to get into this tactic. Now, at my turn, I decide to try this infiltrate. And it is actually successful, so I was all the time afraid of an infiltrate hitting me, but now Amai is the one getting hit by, which of course increases my winning chances even more. Why was I willing to go for that? During h2, Amai didn't draw that many cards. He went for some wars, played some aggressions, upgraded some warriors to swordsmen. He didn't have that many draws, and maybe you remember the Developed Territory 1, where he sent a warrior plus an h2 colonization card away. So an h2 colonization card he already discarded at that point. Also him just passing on the wealthy territory, instead of maybe at least bidding a warrior that he would have only cost him 1 strength plus a card, also was somewhat suspicious. Maybe he rather wanted to pass than just bidding 1 to not make it too obvious that he doesn't have a defense card. Of course he has now drawn 3 h3 cards, but still, getting a defense card out of 3 draws is definitely below 50%, so there was just a chance that the aggression would go through. I thought maybe I will go for strategy so that it doesn't even cost me any draws. At the end, I won't develop the strategy this turn. So it will cost me some draws, but nonetheless, I was willing to try it, and I do get rewarded for it. Amai is definitely a bit unlucky to not have the defense card that he needs here. Now it is my turn. I will go for the multimedia here. I'm not sure if I do it correctly this turn, but because I even will skip the strategy here, and that kinda contradicts what I just told when looking at the overview and saying how the situation is, when I said that I just need to make sure that I don't get punished in the military and then things should be looking good for me. But I do think the multimedia would be a really strong thing for Amai to invest into. It also would give him the opportunity to go for Fleming and replace Gaudi that he just lost. So I do think multimedia is a good take here. It also really helps me maybe to prepare for some impacts and just increase my culture production by going for some upgrades. So I do think the multimedia is a good take. Maybe I should have, after building this opera, I should have still taken the strategy away. I do think that's a bit greedy here. Of course, I was thinking it's h3, the military theory will be there, maybe something like fundamentalism, so there are cards that I can use for myself, and there could be cards that Amai can use for himself. And at the moment, he maybe still needs to find a tactic and all that stuff, but the strategy could still be a useful card for him, and the urban growth, while being useful for myself, of course. Yeah, I think I should just take the strategy here. I think that was not the right call. I draw a defense card, so that's nice to have. Amai will go into computers now that I took the multimedia away, but there are also a bunch of new leaders revealed, so here the next turn can maybe go for Steve Jobs or Einstein. Goes for some upgrades, has some really strong science production, takes the strategy and takes the cannons. Then it's my turn. I will this turn go for the multimedia, and there's even another leader that appears in the row, which is Bill Gates. And maybe you remember that game against Saru, where I maybe should have denied Bill Gates, but went for Marlene instead. And then Saru with Bill Gates was able to pull off quite an incredible comeback. With having learned that lesson, I now was at least really thinking about, should I deny Bill Gates here? If I take him for myself, he is doing anything for me basically. It's just a denial. But here I think maybe I should deny him, but I was thinking that it's not a correct choice here because there are other leaders that also could do some work for Amai. Amai has some decent resource production anyway, and Bill Gates isn't just doing nothing for me. Of course, I can just keep Bach, but yeah, I felt like it's just not necessary here. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I am doing the same mistake again, maybe that's the way how I could get punished, maybe I should just deny Bill Gates, but at the end I let Bill Gates fall down to Amai and went for Fleming for myself. I will go for an upgrade with the urban growth to multimedia, go for another upgrade, really maximizing my culture income. I will then go for Fleming and take the reserves. So again, I maybe played a bit greedily. I go for those upgrades, but I still have a lot of resource in hand, but I don't take the military theories, so Amai can now also deny that card from me, which maybe limits my military options and maybe helps Amai for his military options. But at this point, I'm also running that much away with the culture that one war or something, or maybe even two wars, could not be enough for Amai. I still have the potential to go for quite a significant strength increase, and at least Amai has to take this military theory. Maybe it will distract him from taking some other cards, and yeah, but at this point, I think I didn't do my best to play it as safely as possible, and maybe I should have maybe played a bit more safely. I draw some card, impacts of strength, impact of wonders, which is seedable, and the mechanized army tactic. So if I get tanks, that could be an interesting tactic to have. Amai seeds, the crime wave hits, which was seeded by him and costs him some culture now. He will go for Bill Gates, goes up to 15 resource production, takes the military theory and takes the modern infantry. With that, I think it should be relatively clear in which direction he wants to go, and that he maybe wants to go for a war. The nice thing about Fleming is, though, and that was also one of the reasons why I wanted to take him, he really gives me clear knowledge about what my opponent has to work with, which impacts, and especially if he has a war, has he tactics that he can use nicely. And so now, of course, I spied with Fleming, and I saw that Amai doesn't have a war, but what he does have is the positional army tactics. So that certainly gives him some big strength potential. But he still needs to find a war, so a bit unlucky he didn't find a war yet, but he still could find one, so I certainly have to be careful about it. I see the impact of wonders this turn, a national pride is revealed, giving me even another 5 culture, and this turn I will take and play the revolutionary idea, and go into fundamentalism. So this time, now that I first of all gotten some knowledge about the potential from Amai, and now that I have played it a bit greedily the turns before, I this turn went for a bit more of a safe line. I go for the fundamentalism, which gives me 26 strength, so a good strength lead, and then to get out of corruption. I will actually build another opera, giving me more culture, but if Amai is able to go all in on that war, I might not be in a position to win that war anyway if I do now some better preparations. So it is maybe not, it seems again like I'm doing some greedy stuff, but I thought that it's likely that if Amai draws a war, I will lose that war. But then when I have more culture, um, that can still help me if I have that opera now for the next few turns. That is generating me some culture, and the question if I played it safer, if I then would have gotten more strength that will justify not having that culture available, especially because the Hollywood is coming down the road. I could of course deny it, but that might distract him from doing his military preparations, and then I can maybe finish the Hollywood, and that again gives me so many points that I'm able to maybe absorb one or maybe even two wars. I draw some aggressions and the impact of agriculture. My seeds, my arms industry is revealed, but unfortunately for Amai, he doesn't have any blue tokens lying around, so he would have only gotten 2 resources out of it anyway, but now he doesn't get anything, while I gain 4 additional resources. He will go for the military theory this turn, goes for the modern infantry, goes for a bunch of upgrades, making sure that he still draws 3 cards, making sure that he gets the air forces. I do think he needs to play towards this out, but the culture lead is getting bigger and bigger here. Then increases his population to get out of corruption. Now it's my turn. I think I don't push here because there's a chance that I might destroy some farms at some point, so the impact of agriculture could backfire. And I don't use my politics phase. I also can't spy with flaming this turn. In this turn I increase my population 2 times, take the Hollywood and take the tanks. I have the mechanized army. Amai could have drawn a war by now, but unless he has drawn 2 wars, it might be better for him to go for 1 more setup turn, so that he can make sure to go for 2 armies with 2 air forces, meaning I might have a bit of time to set up my military. And with taking the tanks, I have enough science to go for tanks in the next turn, for air forces in 2 turns, so that I can defend with the mechanized army tactic ideally. And I take the Hollywood because that's just so much points that even if I get hit by a war now, it might just still be my best option to finish the Hollywood. I build then a cannon, going up to 29 strength, spending a military action while I can. I draw 2 wars myself. I was at the next turn I can use flaming again. Of course I was very interested to see what I will find in Amai's hand. Amai for now will cede, so no war yet. Independence declaration is revealed, which I've ceded, losing the wealthy territory. Amai interestingly goes into oil, which could be an indicator towards an impact of industry, could also be an indicator that he hasn't found a war yet, but we will see that he is actually setting up in a way that he could go for a war. Is going for 2 cannons, revealing the tactic, and he's just enough military action so that he could declare a war now, build 2 cannons and 2 air forces. And so he is maybe it's one of those turns where he tries to stay flexible, but because he hasn't drawn a war yet, maybe it's also, of course, one of the situations where he just needs to hope that he draws a war and just play as if he had one in hand. Of course, ideally still making sure to get as many draws as possible, but maybe even then it's not a bad turn. That could be helpful for the impacts. It's really looking like impact of industry might be in there. And yeah, so now of course I was very interested to see Amai has gotten 6 more draws since my last peek, if he has a war in hand, and indeed he has a war over culture in hand, and he can go for 2 armies with 2 air forces, can go for an amount of strength that I can't match, so now I just have to make sure to defend as good as possible. I take the air forces, develop the tanks, play the wave before I will lose it to the end of the age, go for some upgrades, play 1 copy of reserves, destroy a farm, go for a cannon. First I experimented about lines where I also played a 2nd copy of reserves for resources, but when I do this, I don't have enough resources to go for 2 air forces while still finishing the Hollywood. And as said, I can't threaten enough strength to win this war anyway, and I do think the best thing that I can prepare for here is to defend as good as possible by also being able to finish the Hollywood, and I came to the conclusion that instead of playing the reserves for resources, I will take the engineering genius, and now it actually works perfectly. I have just enough resources so that I can build 2 air forces and finish the Hollywood, and while I will lose this war, I still felt quite confident with having that big of a lead. I will draw 1 card, another defense card, and H4 starts. I will declare the war against me, so that was not a surprise after I had some informations from my spies. Amai has to destroy quite a bunch of stuff, even a computer, so that war is quite painful for him, or quite expensive, but it's still what he has to do here, and he is at the end able to go for a very clean number of 100 strength, so he's just getting into the triple digits here. I think I don't use my politics phase here, I just go for the air forces, play the reserves for resources. I have to destroy some stuff. I destroy a farm because I have the impact of agriculture in hand, and with Amai going for oil, it looked like he might have ceded the impact of industry, especially with destroying a computer instead of the oil, which will cost him points with Bill Gates maybe. So I felt like that is a likely impact. Nonetheless, when we take a look at the end of my turn, maybe it was still a mistake to destroy this farm, because I maybe should play against the worst possible things that could happen for me, but for now I will just build 2 air forces, going up to 78 strength. I will then finish the Hollywood for 46 points, so quite a strong Hollywood, giving me lots of points. And the problem with having destroyed the farm now is that I will lose 4 food, meaning now I'm at 0 food minus 4. And while of course this mine could give me +4 for an impact of industry, there is a chance that the economic progress is the top event. I think it's not an event that I have knowledge about. And if that economic progress should be in top, I could lose 16 culture, and I'm in a situation where I maybe should play around my worst outcome, so maybe after all it would have been better to destroy the mine instead of the farm. Amai steals 27 culture from me, but as you can see I still have a very big lead, just showcasing how it can go in two-player games. Just going for a military plan as you're out in H3 is not really the best way to go in two-player games. Of course, if Amai maybe would have drawn as many wars as I have in some of the games that we have already seen from the stage, where I was often blessed with a bunch of wars, especially in the four-player games, maybe it would have been enough for him, but still he still needed to build up some military first, and then maybe it's the question if he had enough time to go for 3 wars or something. So yeah, and 2 wars might still not be enough. Of course, maybe I could have a worse tactic or something, but we just see here how difficult it is to try to come back with the military play in H3 in a two-player game, because the difference is still extremely big here. Amai seats, the immigration is revealed, which is no economic progress, which is nice for me. Amai fixes his happy faces, goes for a movie, increases his culture income, fixes his food income a little bit. At least I know that the impact of agriculture isn't in there. Maybe he has seated impact of balance though. And then before the final impacts, I have such a big lead that there should be no way back for Amai into the game. The impact of wonders is revealed, giving me 2 points more than Amai. We have the impact of balance indeed, that gives Amai plus 10. Then there's the impact of industry, which was kinda to be expected. So now keeping my mine was worth it at the end. And then there's the impact of government, which gives Amai another 2 points. There's the Bill Gates bonus, but at the end this is a relatively clear result. And I'm able to win this game. So yeah, quite an interesting game. I think I managed to get into a nice setup in H1. And it was actually such a nice setup that I was able to absorb a plunder and a war over territory while still remaining somewhat stable. Nonetheless, during those turns in H2, the things certainly could have gone wrong for me. And I maybe played it a bit too greedily when I committed to the additional printing press with Gutenberg. So with the right aggressions, maybe I could have had a lot more issues in this game. And also, of course, if I wouldn't have drawn any tactic, if I would have had no tactic to work with, no mobile artillery, then again, things could have looked quite dangerous for me. So I can maybe be glad that I survived that. Nonetheless, I was able to absorb some things, also showcasing that my position had maybe already a bit of an edge going into H2 in terms of economical power and how well I generally was equipped for different things. And then it was just to showcase how difficult it is to come back in a two-player game with a pure military gameplay. And I mean, I denied some options from him, took the journalisms away, the multimedia away. I basically forced him into this direction also somewhat. But that's also why I was willing to do that. I just think that is if you can go for any big culture reduction yourself, then just relying on wars to come back in H3 can be bad. And I put Amai into a situation where he maybe kind of was forced to do it, and he pulled off one big war. Maybe it could have been bigger if I wouldn't have had this tactic, a mechanized army tactic, but yeah, the big lead is so big that Amai would need at least 2 wars, which would need to be bigger. How things went now. So yeah, just showcasing the different realities in two-player games compared to some other player counts. And I am at the end, of course, happy that I managed to win this game. During H2 it was a bit nervous. I then maybe played it a bit carelessly in H3. Maybe I should have taken strategy, maybe taken military theory, maybe taken Bill Gates. So I just maybe played it a bit quickly or greedily, but we also saw that at the end my bleed was just so big that it worked out, and Fleming gave me a lot of points with the Hollywood, gave me some information. Alright, with that this game is finished, and we can now take a quick look at the current standings. And there have been 2 other games finished where I wasn't involved. In the 3-player game that happened without me, Di Rodriguez was able to win against Ching Ching and Amai. Or wait, I think Amai finished second this game. Yes, Di Rodriguez won against Amai and Ching Ching. And Ching Ching won the 2-player game against Amai. And with that, we have the following situation in the standings. My position still looking quite good. I have 21 points. I managed to win all of my games so far. And now it's maybe looking like Di Rodriguez might be the one player who still has chances to come back. He still has 5 games to finish, can still score a lot of points. So he is maybe the one player who can still catch up to me, while Ching Ching and Amai have already more games finished and shouldn't be able to catch up to me any longer. For them, it's now, of course, gets even more. They have to focus a lot more on getting not last now, because we are on stage 3 in the upper bracket, and in stage 3 the last player of the upper bracket groups actually get eliminated directly, which is a bit harsh, but at least also makes it that not only the first position is a position that really matters. So I think on one hand it's quite harsh that you can get eliminated. On the other hand, the first position being the only one that really matters, I think it's also has some weaknesses. So it's a double-edged sword on how much I like it that the last position, the upper bracket, can get eliminated directly. Maybe if it would happen to me at some point, I would maybe be clearly in favor of that not being the case. And also, in case you didn't hear the news in the Discord channel of the 3DHs. In the 3DHs Discord channel, the next World Championship edition will actually use a completely different format, without any groups, and an approach to go to maybe not make metagaming as relevant and fix some other issues. So next year we will have a different format anyway. But for now, it's the last position will get eliminated, and now Ching Ching and Amai are of course in danger of getting eliminated at the end. Alright, so that is the situation in the standings. Half of my games have finished. I still need to score some points. Di Rodriguez still has the possibility to catch up to me, and I hope you're excited to see the remaining games of the stage. And then we are at the end of the video. I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.